into it. Alrighty, guys. So, a few polls, and thanks to everyone that's been filling out our polls. I do put these on Twitter and in a couple of different Facebook groups I'm in to try and get a good gauge of sentiment and what different groups think, because people that, there's a lot more sort of maybe business people on Twitter, a better mix. In the free Facebook groups, we get a good mix of the retail investor. And then obviously in our premium Facebook group, we have sort of a bit more advanced traders, I guess. People that have been in crypto a bit longer that have sort of seen a few more dips than that. So we get a good mix. But the polls that I've done this week had this pretty much the same sort of mix in all three. So rather than getting any key messages, this was kind of the consensus. So do you think Bitcoin will trade sideways or lower for the next 6 months to 2 years? And I wanted a binary answer. Some people were saying, you didn't give enough options. Well, that wasn't what I was after. All I wanted was to get a gauge of how many people actually think that this could continue for 6 months. And 30% is a fair chunk of people. Considering Bitcoin's been in a downtrend for 6 months already, considering 30% of people, or more if you add these people, but only half of the people poll results think that we're not going to continue this for 6 months, which, again, it's kind of bearish sentiment when everyone's kind of thinking that, this isn't great. The market doesn't look like it's going to turn around. There's no real consensus. So at the same time, you can probably say that, look, 50% of people saying no, we haven't had that flush out to really capitulate and really scare people to think that this is never bouncing back. And I'll tie that into my thoughts as well. So the next thing was, how many friends do you have or people that are waiting to get into crypto? So 70% of people said they've got none, which is very interesting. So, 20% of people sort of saying more than three, which is kind of what I would have thought about, at least a third of people, 30%, having at least one friend. But maybe that says that no one's really interested in getting in now, even though this is kind of waiting for the market recover. People will wait for the market to more than have recovered. They'll wait for the, bullish candles, good headlines, even new all-time highs really, before we get a huge influx of retail investors. But there's still definitely another wave of people to come into this space. I did those stats the other day about 0.03% of people actually owning crypto the world over. So still a lot of room to get new investors in. Now, this has just ticked up slightly, but, this is past 12 months, and there's no doubt, guys, that Bitcoin, and those that don't know how this works, the number here, 10 represents the percentage versus its all-time highs on the time frame that you're searching. So searches for Bitcoin are down 90%. That's basically what it's saying, and that's no surprises. We know that Australia is right up there in terms of crypto enthusiasts, punters. We love a gamble, good disposable income in the country. That's the next poll, and why I really want to mention Australia, because we're coming up to June 30, 2-hour tax time. So this question was about, some people will be, locking in losses for tax purposes, reshuffling their portfolio, look, whatever it is, but this was a pretty resounding no. And I actually thought we'd have a few more yeses. I thought we'd have a lot of people that are sort of sitting on a loss and needing to sell crypto to cover their tax bill, or wanting to lock in that loss to reduce their tax bill, get rid of those bad coins, look, whatever it is, but this was a pretty overarching no that people aren't selling crypto, because I think Australians own a lot of that tradable crypto that's on exchanges. I don't think Australians were those early adopters and the whales in the top 100 that own, millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin. But I definitely think Australia was, leading the way in terms of absolute crypto madness towards the end of last year. And they own a lot of that sort of tradable crypto that's been bought off exchanges. And if they were to sell, I definitely think that could have an impact on the price. Just like people were talking about, the US selling coming into tax time. It's just a date that I want to be aware of, June 30. But it's pretty clear that the majority of people aren't even looking to sell. So maybe that's not going to have any influence on things. Next up, chain analysis. So check out this website, check out their blog. What they're saying here is a lot of this $30 billion sell-off was money changing hands, during that big run-up in December and January, where a lot of it went from from long-term investors to the speculators, basically, particularly through April. But really that big chunk there was right in the peak of the bubble, or short-term bubble. You guys know that I think that we've got a much bigger bubble to blow in the long-term scheme of things. But just interesting to see that a lot of those long-term coins sort of changed hands. And all this means, guys, is that whales took profits when it was up over 15, 20,000, like I've been saying. Unfortunately, that was the dumb money, that the FOMO, the herd piling in at the wrong time. And the whales that are buying now, if they're using those profits, they get 3 times as much Bitcoin to hodl for the next run up. And that's how whales work and how smart traders work, guys. Buy low, sell high. And we'll talk about it again with the shorts that are piling in at the wrong time now near the bottom. But read this article in full, Chainalysis, to talk about these coins changing hands. It's interesting to talk about the coins that are lost and other things that I've touched on in a few videos this week. Now, next up, this is a chart of the NASDAQ. So since since the global financial crisis, it's had a huge run up, about 600%. And a lot of people saying, well, we thought this is sort of the top was in and this was going to correct, and I certainly thought we were going to see more correction than we barely got anything, and markets have rallied back, breaking out to new all-time highs. And people are saying, well, why would people invest in crypto assets if they can invest in the safety of the stock market and it's breaking out to new all-time highs, it's in blue sky? Well, guys, I think that's a terrible argument. Why would you invest in something that's overextended? Some of these stocks are trading on ridiculous multiples versus investing in a space that's down 70%. Some of the best projects are down 90%. Surely, if you're taking the mindset of what's going to give me better bang for buck over the next few years, it's a market that's down 90%. If you do your research and pick the good projects versus a market that's overextended, trading on huge multiples. Everyone thinks that all these huge tech stocks are the future, and tech stocks are the future, but I don't think it's these tech stocks in a lot of ways. I think there's plenty of companies that are going to get a rude shock when some of these blockchain companies, blindside them and come from nowhere and surpass them in terms of having the best technology. So next one here is the searches for Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto. And what I wanted to show, all I wanted to prove here was, look, the searches for blockchain are 95% less, okay, and cryptocurrency about 90% less. So even at the peak of the bubble, people having euphoria around Bitcoin is completely different to people that are even understanding what blockchain is, or even the word cryptocurrency is getting nowhere near the search terms compared to Bitcoin. So that just shows you when people are sort of talking about, speculators and dumb money and those people that are searching for Bitcoin, but how many people of those are actually searching for what's blockchain? 5%, and even that number is probably a bit generous as we see it sort of trade off down here. Searches are just absolutely no one searching for this stuff anymore. So it just shows you there's another huge wave of people that maybe understand Bitcoin but are yet to understand what cryptocurrency is and how blockchain works. And a lot of people just rushed in simply for Bitcoin is going to get me rich sort of mindset. Now, there's been a trend going around on Twitter about how did you get through the 2014-15 bear market. So look, check out these headlines. There's just a couple that I wanted to point out. Mt. Gox obviously, halted all those withdrawals. A few attacks. Satoshi Nakamoto, they thought they found him. There's a couple of other ones here that I just wanted to mention. So Ethereum launching their Ether coin, and that got a lot of pushback from the Bitcoin community at the time. Tim Draper said that Bitcoin will go to $10,000. I think it was about $200 at the time, and everyone thought he was crazy. So it's just interesting to go back and read these headlines. Here's a few from 2015 as well. Bitstamp hack, Coinbase starting to get in the headlines. JP Blythe Masters leaving. There's one more here that was really important at the time. So Ross Ulbricht of the Silk Road getting life in prison, and that really gave Bitcoin a bad name for months on end there, guys. And just the association with the dark web. Is Greece behind the latest price surge? So capital controls, when Greece couldn't get money out of ATMs, and this is entire countries and regions we're going to see turns of Bitcoin for their sovereignty and financial freedom. So that's going to be a theme that's going to continue to increase. New York brought out their bit license and killed innovation, and all those exchanges and companies moved away from New York. And that's something that the SEC and CFTC are mindful of. You can tell now with this legislation, they don't want to kill adoption, guys. So all these things are just interesting, guys. If you get time, scroll back and read through a few of those old headlines to see what it was like. I remember this clearly, and I remember this post clearly. These are the prices for each year's for Bitcoin. Now, at the time, as I said, Bitcoin was around $200, and people were just saying, no way. And here's the post of someone saying, if Bitcoin gets to 10K at any point in 2017, I'll actually eat my left ball. You can quote me and remind me on this. So, sure enough, someone did. And this is a bit of a funny post, guys. I won't give away the ending, but have a read of this where he says, I'm a man of my word. But that's just the point I wanted to get across, was for people to comprehend that Bitcoin could go from $200 to 10K was completely ridiculous. And yet here we are with Bitcoin at $6,000. Maybe it goes lower, but people have these targets of 50, 100K, and people are saying that's completely ridiculous. But guys, it is very reasonable. When watch those 2-part series I did about can Bitcoin reach $1 million. Look at the fundamental reasons why. Now, this is the number of Bitcoin, wallet addresses or users. So this has just been steadily trending up. Look, I know it's frustrating to watch the price go down, but ever since Bitcoin peaked, the number of wallet addresses is, it's still climbing, guys. There's still more people joining this space, active users. It's nothing to panic about. Bitcoin's not dead. Ethereum even more so. So look at the number here in January, end of the year, about 15 million unique addresses. That's more than doubled, nearly tripled. And this isn't even the latest data. So the ICO space, projects building on top of Ethereum. Out of the top 100 tokens, 94 are built on top of Ethereum. Out of the top 800 tokens, 87% are built on top of Ethereum. So guys, that I've said a number of times, I'm open-minded to other platforms. I've covered some that I'm very bullish on the channel. Well done to EOS that have surpassed the 15% mark to launch their network today. We're open-minded to whatever tech and whatever blockchains are best for each industry, but don't discount the fact that ETH's got the first mover advantage. Have now been cleared by the SEC to not be a security. That's going to maybe pave the way for an ETF. All those sort of things. Yes, Bitcoin lost its market share to other sort of cryptocurrencies last year, but it doesn't mean it didn't continue to have the huge growth. It can go from 1,000 to 20,000. I think Ethereum's going to surprise people a lot when it gets moving and the train leaves the station again, guys. So, look, I think everyone needs to own at least a little bit of Bitcoin and Ethereum, as well as all your favorite projects. They're really the two biggest decentralized projects, and that's why the SEC basically has said what they've said about third parties and what's a security. I might talk about that a little bit more. Next up, the amount of money's coming into this space through ICOs and venture capital, guys. This is data just from late February even. So look, the number is going to surpass 2017 in terms of how much money's been invested in this space, guys. I don't think it's even slowing down. It's getting harder for ICOs to raise, but remember, there's thousands of ICOs now. So the actual amount of capital that's flowing into the projects is still growing. So the space is not dead. That's the point I want to get across with that article there. So Crypto Miso, this shows commits on GitHub for certain projects. So Komodo was one I covered recently at the top of the list there. A lot of activity programming-wise. EOS, we know they're launching their chain. We know Cardano has a lot of sort of peer-reviewed stuff going on. Lisk we've covered. I'm huge on 0x. Nulls I want to cover. Look, Tron's got a lot of activity there. Hat off to them. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of Tron. And there's a few coins in the top 10 or 20, guys, that have got an absolute war chest of money. So they're going to buy other companies. They're going to buy partnerships. Don't be surprised with that stuff happening. But at the end of the day, rubber's got to hit the road. It's about what the protocol can do. Who's developing it? Do they have a big developer community? Do they have partnerships, real world partnerships, and people going to use this? I don't care if you do 1 million transactions per second. are the companies that need 1 million transactions going to use your blockchain, have developers that are familiar with it? Can they integrate their business model onto your blockchain? So all those things I'm thinking about whenever I read, the big headlines and the flashy websites and people with lots of money announcing partnerships. Does it mean anything, or have they bought that partnership because they've got a lot of money? 3,533 ICOs by industry on ICO Bench. Now, with all these rating sites, guys, be very careful. A lot of them, you can buy a good review. You can buy a banner on the homepage. If they rate you 4 out of 5, you can email them, pay a few more Bitcoin, and get that rating up. So just always, take everything in the crypto space with a grain of salt. Align yourself with trusted sources of information. Hopefully I can be one of those. We don't do any paid reviews on the channel, guys. But the point here is, look at how many platforms there are. Do we need 1,800 platforms? Are we going to have 4 or 5 of those be dominant? Maybe we have a few more than that around different countries. Maybe a couple for different industries. But do we really need, once these platforms scale, people aren't going to just use 1,800 different ones, one per company as a platform, guys. People are going to migrate to the good ones that have the most, plugins, APIs, software development kits, developers that are familiar with how to use that. All those things. Think about the real world use case compared to the flashy numbers and all the fringe benefits that people seem to really put a lot of weight in versus the real world use case. So again, 1,300 cryptocurrencies. There's no need for that many acting as a true currency. What I like about this list here, I feel the projects that we're involved in and that I'm very bullish on. You're probably sick of me talking about it, but I look down this list and, there's none really disrupting agriculture. That makes me happy for block grain. Voting, decision-making, Horizon State. There's another little project, ClearPoll in Australia, that I might cover. So look for the ones that aren't absolutely saturated. Everyone's got these business services. Oh, we're a blockchain for business, for enterprise, Everyone's got these. Look how many AI and big data and all these sort of things there are now. So there might be some great projects. Hopefully we've covered the best 1 or 2 or 3 in each industry on the channel, and we'll continue to do so. But it's so hard, guys. If you're one of 500 coins in an industry, wouldn't you rather be one of 10 and the only one in your country trying to disrupt an industry? Again, just think about those things. Next up here, the Coinbase Index Fund. And I just wanted to clear something up because I've heard some prominent figures in the space give out incorrect information here. Coinbase Index Fund is balanced in terms of weighting of the top coins, so Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, the top 5 coins by market cap, it weights those in the index, but it directly buys those coins. So that's the point I want to get across. It is not like futures that track the price. The index fund tracks the price for investing purposes, but Coinbase buy those coins, buy those assets. So someone hands over, $250,000, and this is open for use as of today. They've got to buy $250,000 of those coins in those ratios, and then it rebalances every so often. So they might have to sell a bit of, Ethereum and buy a bit of Litecoin, whatever it is. But the point is, this isn't just people flooding money into futures contracts and it doesn't ever actually put upwards pressure on the price of crypto. This needs to buy coins. So that's very important. This is as good as an ETF in a lot of ways if this gains traction. So you guys know that I love Coinbase and Brian Armstrong and what he does for the space. Next up, the cheat sheet. We're going to start to talk about where we are. Was that the bottom? So we're definitely here somewhere. We're kind of at this triple bottom-ish, but what I'm starting to lean towards and what we're seeing is that people are kind of expecting that the worst is over. We haven't seen, an absolute cry for bloodbath and, this is going to zero. We haven't seen real fear in a climax, and that's what tends to mark a bottom. So we're kind of here, guys. Do we get that one last big flush lower? And that's kind of, what a lot of people are starting to lean towards. The only counter argument is that everyone's starting to post their target of $3,000 Bitcoin, and everyone's kind of looking forward to that level to buy more altcoins. And that's where I'm really trying to weigh up sentiment and everything that's happening, what I'm seeing across all the pages, to give you an accurate prediction of what I think is going to happen. So I don't think we're going to get that $3,000 mark that everyone's kind of looking for. And if altcoins got down there, as I've said for months, some of the good coins would be down 99% from their all-time highs. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we maybe get that retest of 6K and a kind of a flush that would be, leading people to really panic and think, wow, that triple bottom didn't hold. Maybe we are going to 3K, and a bad news headline would maybe drive that lower. But at the same time, before we finish this video, I want to present the argument about the SEC news was incredibly bullish. That's what the market has been holding its breath for. So we've heard Jay Clayton say that Bitcoin is not a security, and everyone was waiting and fearful about Ethereum being classed as a security and what it would mean. But now we've come out and said that, Ethereum's not a security. Some ICOs are. So what they're saying is nearly all ICOs are. And by that, I think they mean nearly all new ICOs. So I think the SEC are going to crack down on current ICOs. I don't think they're going to go back and chase some of those older projects that have launched on Ethereum in 15, 16, even 2017. I think they're going to work their way in, as I've said, from the scams, the frauds, the poorly run ICOs, the ones that promise returns, have dividend style projects as rewards. So the main thing and the main focus, the takeaway message was determining, if a third party has any real, say in the running of the business. And unfortunately, the reality is that maybe Ethereum was, maybe a lot of coins were. Once they launched that decentralized style networks, it definitely makes them less of an ICO. But something I want to mention here, I'm not sure if I've got another slide teed up, guys, but I'll mention it now. This isn't going to go down well with Ripple holders, but every definition of what SEC have said so far, Ethereum doesn't fall into that category. We did a whole video about why Ethereum isn't a security, but Ripple does fall into that category, guys. Ripple Labs, they have a lot of say of how it runs. They've got a lot of 60% still of the tokens that they haven't sold. So just about every definition of what the SEC have said a security is, Ripple falls into it. So just be aware of that. I'm not trying to create FUD. It doesn't mean that Ripple's dead. Coinbase are already looking to list coins that are security. So it might just mean that they've got to go through that process. If you're a Ripple holder, XRP, just be aware of it. We've seen other headlines come out today from the Ripple chief engineer saying that Ripple XRP token isn't actually being used that much. Just be aware of that, guys. So I've got that article here. Banks unlikely to process payments with distributed ledgers for now, says Ripple's chief cryptographer David Swartz. So, we've seen, the stories of the tests, who's using XRP versus who's using Ripple's technology. And look, guys, this isn't ideal. I don't want to harp on about this. It's going to get enough thumbs down anyway for just mentioning this stuff about Ripple. So let's try and go back onto a positive. So we're under EOS. They've officially launched that network. The percentage of votes really rushed in now that exchanges are allowing votes and that sort of thing. So a lot of people were worried about having to plug in your private key. Who do you trust that to, guys? Normally, you never give out your private key to anyone online. So a few of these block producers were making trusted portals, but this was all very new. There's already been a few scams. Hopefully some of those scams can be reversed, which is one of the benefits of EOS if it runs as it's meant to. Hopefully the Australian guys, I know EOS Sphere have been the biggest one in Australia that didn't quite get there. I might work with them. Getting a lot of money and a lot of EOS and supporting the community would be a great thing for Australia and for all those block producers that it's clear what they're going to do with the funds from the block rewards. So something that we might cover more on the channel, and a lot of EOS fans really enjoyed talking to Ross from EOS Sphere. Finally, a bit of macro stuff. So last night I tweeted about the ECB ending their QE at the end of the year. But guys, this is a pass the baton sort of thing. The US did QE for years, so money printing to buy bonds, to falsely suppress interest rates. Japan have been doing this for decades. It's a pass the baton between the big economies. And at the end of the day, nobody wins. It's the little guy that's not getting wage increases as inflation increases each year that, loses out. So it's funny to watch this. It's all big and important, but at the end of the day, guys, they're all just printing more money and debasing currencies. And over time, that should mean that cryptocurrencies continue to increase. They're scarce, they're deflationary versus currencies which are inflationary. So just something to be aware of that we've spoken about a little bit. So while we've been talking, we had a bit of a break, a spike up, not a lot of volume there. Bit of a pullback, and this is when we tend to get this action, guys, on Friday nights, particularly once the markets had the day to digest the SEC news. I honestly would have said the markets would have jumped more. So I know Ethereum jumped about 10%, but I would have thought it would have continued to trend higher, considering it was the green flag in a lot of ways that people were waiting for, that clarity. Markets don't like uncertainty. We got a bit of certainty. Are people worried about Tether? I'm not sure. Tether's been in the news, every year I've been in crypto, guys. It's not perfect. I'm honestly not too worried about it. There's that many other options out there now. People switching to true USD, Binance looking to add Euro pairs, Hubai saying they're coming to Australia to add Australia dollar pairs. So the bigger the space grows, the more options there are. There's going to be FUD headlines if something is to have it happen to Tether. It's definitely an excuse for people to panic and for the mainstream media to write terrible headlines. But at the end of the day, does it really affect this space, guys, and all the thousands of coins you own? I don't think it does. I think it would be short-term panic and FUD, and I think the markets would recover. So what we're seeing now, a bit of a sell-off. Let's watch how this plays out over the weekend. A lot of people are going to be disappointed that news didn't drive the markets higher, guys. If I was a betting man, I think, unfortunately, we've got to lean towards that the markets are still just really, really bearish, and that we're probably going to continue this in some sort of fashion until it really scares people and shakes out the last of those people that are non-believers with some sort of capitulation in climax, whether that's volume and price or whether that's a news event that really changes the sentiment and people go, wow, we've got that ETF, or wow, Coinbase has added $10 million to clients in the first 2 days for their index fund. Whatever it is, the market's looking for a reason to turn around. People are trading the trend. So many people are on the sidelines saying, I'm waiting for the clear bottom to be in, an uptrend, breaking these longer term downtrends. Everyone's got their different lines on their charts, but a lot of people are sitting there patient. There's not a lot of trades to be had. So at the moment, guys, I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest that the bottom's in. I'm extremely bullish on this space, medium term to longer term, but I think we could continue to trend lower for a little bit more. So I don't think we're going to 3,000. I think that would be completely ridiculous. If I had to guess, I think the lowest we would get would be this final long-term trend line here around $5,000. But so much good stuff happening in this space, guys. Remember those bets. Take the longer-term view. Watch those videos that we've been doing with people like Stephen Toole that talk about Ethereum, when it was founded, how bright the future is. All these projects electrify Asia during the week. I interviewed government officials from Queensland that are putting Australian government records on the blockchain. We met with the Tasmanian government today about doing some trials with blockchain. So much happening in this space. It is only a matter of time until fundamentals play out, and the overwhelming number of people that are in this space, 250,000 Ethereum developers, guys. The smartest people in the world aren't working on this space because they think it's going to zero. So make sure you're following us on all our social medias, guys. We have been tweeting a lot more stuff behind the scenes lately on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed this stream. I might take a couple of questions for those that want to continue watching now as well. What's medium term? So for those that don't know, guys, I guess I'm saying, this could last another few days, a few weeks, but I don't think it's going to last that 6 months period that a lot of people are saying, are we going to have a 2-year sideways 6 months sideways. I definitely don't think we are. So I definitely think that overwhelming, as I just mentioned, all the things that are happening in this space, that is going to put too much upwards pressure on the price in the coming weeks to months. I just can't see this bear market lasting. Macro-wise, less liquidity in the world. Yeah, we've got to be aware of where money is at the moment. If it's leveraged in stock markets, surely the F news signals the end of the really bad news. Well, that's what I would have really thought. That's what I thought the market would have digested this news, and the markets continue to trend higher today and over the weekend. But from what we're seeing right now, just short term, it doesn't really look like markets are doing what a lot of people would have expected on such good news. Someone's saying the Ripple article was written 5 years ago. This article's from today on Reuters, guys, and check the quote there from the chief scientist. This was today. Sorry, guys. Too many ICOs diluting the good coins. Absolutely, yeah. You've got to be very selective. Blockchain stocks are taking an absolute beating. And again, that's because the traditional world, people that are in the stock world that aren't really believers in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency blockchain projects, they're very hard to convince to even look at that. Why would they even consider a realistic long-term investment in a blockchain stock? So I think they've taken an absolute beating. I know Digital X in Australia is down from 35 cents, I think, recently in the bull market down to 10 cents. So if you believe in this stuff, maybe that presents good long-term opportunities. Do you think good ETH news has deflated a lot of the bear FUD? I hope so. That's what we need. We really need a change in sentiment. So, mainstream restyle, what's going to pump it? We're seeing in Australia, guys, you can already pay every bill in Australia with crypto. People are sort of saying, oh, we're not going to see this run until we're using crypto in our everyday lives. Look at how many projects are about to launch mainnet. Look at the trials that we're teeing up with Blockchain, with real world companies, guys. If you look hard enough, there's dozens of projects that are using their blockchain in industry already, trying to onboard companies. The big projects haven't scaled yet, and the big blockchains, we know that for mass use. But you can't say that there's no projects that are being used in our everyday lives and that this is, 3 to 5 years away like the dot-com bubble. I think a lot of use cases are going to really speed up. Once we get that people using crypto to travel, all of a sudden it's tell your friends the market's recovered. All of a sudden, majority of tourists are familiar with crypto when they come to Australia or whatever country you're in, and we start to see that, it's all about the network effects, and network effects happen faster than ever before because of how interconnected we are. So in the next bull run, I think everyone's got a group of friends that are going to start to bug them again about how to use crypto. Oh, you can buy a coffee with it. All of a sudden there's more coffee shops with a sign up saying Bitcoin. Just gets embedded in the consciousness. Still plenty of positive news coming out, so absolutely. Well, guys, I'll wrap it up there. I'll leave it to you on a Friday night. I do like doing these lives. I hope you guys enjoy them too. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed these. Leave us some comments below. We always read all your comments, the team, and we've got some exciting, for those of you that are still watching, we've got some exciting news coming up in terms of launching another sort of, I can't give away too much. We want to launch a company to help start up blockchains projects in Australia. We want to employ more people from the local community. It's all going pretty well, and people just don't see this when the price goes down 70%. They think it's dead. Trust me, guys. The space has never been more alive. So I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, guys.